do me a favor and don't press the skip ahead button. Just listen to this little promo because it might be something that's interesting to you. My friend Jeff, who is sponsoring these episodes right now, is one of the hosts for the War for the Tower podcast, which is an actual play RPG podcast set in the universe of the Dark Tower. However, he's gotten a little bit tired of telling all of you guys how great that show is and trying to promo that one, and he's part of a podcast network called the Sinister Parent Company Network. So maybe you'd be interested in some of the other shows he's involved with. Good Idea is an improvised think tank that takes half-baked ideas and turns them into genius. Everything is Awesome is an in-depth interview show about independent art, good writing, and social issues. Something Wonderful Right Away is a hilarious long-form improv show, and Shattered Worlds RPG is a space opera actual play that uses the RPG system that Jeff created. Check out all these shows and more on the Sinister Parent Company Twitter feed at SinParentCo. And of course, you can find War for the Tower at warforthetower.com. This is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who. Season
6.
6? Is it?
Episode 0.
Amazon's like Season 1, Episode 1, because they're idiots. In this episode... Oh, I didn't say the name of it. It's A Christmas Carol. Yep. In this episode, there is a miser who needs to be taught the error of his ways. It's a classic story. And it's also a little creepy. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jaime.
So,
what did you find creepy?
The overall setting is very blue and shadowy and dimly lit. Mm. And just that's on purpose, right? To give us the really, there's also like the fact that, and we're going to call him Scrooge. I just hope everybody's okay with that. I know that he has another name and it doesn't matter. He's obviously Scrooge. It's fine. But Scrooge's main office is huge, cavernous. It's like the floor of a manufacturing plant with all the, equipment removed.
I read that was purposeful to make him basically be sort of dwarfed by the size of his office.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And because of that and the color that they use, there's a very, like I said, a very blue palette. Mm-hmm. It just gives everything a cold, creepy sort of feeling.
They also made his office, the walls were copper, but they were like corroded copper, so it's green. Mm-hmm. And then there's like red too, so that it's very subtly Christmassy.
Well, I can't say that it registered for me.
It didn't register for me at all. Either thing.
So I don't know what to tell them about that.
I'll take your word on that. Your subtle reds and your subtle greens that I did not pay attention to because I was just too taken by the fact that there are sharks swimming in fog, which I loved.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And super creepy also. I mean, you're like, what did you find creepy? I'm like, what are you talking about? What did I find creepy? They get attacked by a shark on land in the middle of a building.
I loved it.
That's fine. You can love a creepy thing. I'm just saying it is creepy though. Like
all the little fish swimming around the gas lamp. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. So cute.
I have to ask, in this universe, if there's just fish in the air, does it stink?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Because, people say, well, if something has a really rank fish smell, that means the fish has gone bad. Fresh fish doesn't have that smell. And, okay, to a degree, that's true. No,
fish is fish. It smells like fish.
It just does. And then I started, like, when I wondered to myself if it smells because they have fish in the air, then I had to ask myself, do birds smell? And I just don't know it because I'm just used to there being bird smell everywhere because we've always had birds in the air.
No.
You don't know? Do you know that?
Have you ever had a bird?
No.
Okay.
And even if I did, it's not the same as like a wild bird.
Well, have you had a fish tank?
Yeah, but those fish aren't out in the air.
But the fish tank eventually gets smelly if it's not well taken care of.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
Okay.
when they're out wild, it's going to be different than when they're captive somewhere. Like, if you have a cage full of birds, of course it's going to stink because all their shit's just piling up in this one cage.
Well, my point was that when my mom had birds, they didn't smell. I think that fish smell because they're in water and they're slimy and all that's gotta eventually have a weird smell when it's oxygenated. And I think that this is not a normal universe and the fish live in the fog. Maybe it smells oceany. I don't know.
Like, maybe it just smells like being on the beach all the time.
Which actually is not terrible.
No, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Although I say that and like, there are definitely some beaches that are
Sure.
much fishier than others. My grandmother, she lived very close to, it was a weird setup. There was what was called Short Beach, which was the one that was closest to her. And then there was Long Beach right after that. And Long Beach, there was like a division of some like rock formations between them. And Long Beach was the one that people would go and like sunbathe and swim because the rock formation kept all of the marsh mud and swamp separated out of the water, and the Long Beach was just like clean. But if you went to Short Beach, it smelled like fish. There was like black mud that was like up on the sand, and it was just very sludgy, and it was wild because they were so close together. But when you went from one to the other, there was like two totally different, pieces of geology. Is that the word I want?
No?
You know what I'm talking about when they like different types of landmass? Types of terrain.
I was going to say topography.
Not terribly
Not
off.
right.
But yeah.
What you're describing is so very Atlantic.
Is it?
I know what you're talking about because I grew up, well, I didn't grow up, but I'm from Rhode Island, and the beaches often are like that. There's some beautiful ones, and there's some areas that are like, ooh, it's slimy. These rocks are all slimy. But the Pacific
Rude.
is not like that. So it really, I feel like the beaches on the Atlantic have a different sort of, I don't know. What you're talking about is very Atlantic.
Okay.
I can think of Florida too that has some of that.
Yeah, it's just like, I guess the wetlands would probably contribute to that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry. This is not interesting. Sorry, everybody. So anyway, I was sort of fascinated at the idea because, we see people like walking around with like goggles on.
Yeah.
And it's sort of funny how it's like really looks steampunky, but like that is so not what's happening here at all.
It kind of is.
Like,
it's very Victorian, and yet it's like the 46th century on a different planet.
yes. I thought that was a really neat thing to do because we had already an episode, like a Christmas episode set in, Dickensian England, and Dickens is literally there. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do a Christmas Carol, but you don't just want to fucking make that shit, all over again. If you don't just want to be like, oh, we'll go back in time and actually having it be a sort of stylized version of that world, I just always love the whole, like, I'm a fan of Victorian aesthetic in general, but I like there being like a play on it. I've always been into that. And that's sort of what like has appealed to me about like the aesthetics of the Harry Potter universe in the movies as well. Because, you know, you get to go like have some really wild top hats that are like too long and crooked and corsets that are like weird colors that probably would not have been popular at the time. And there's a lot of like the what's the word I want here is like, cause I'm thinking of like the twins and their joke shop.
Right.
And the sort of aesthetic of the labels of everything.
Yeah.
But then the colors are very different, or there's just a slightly modernized version of some of the sort of trappings that you would see on old fashioned advertisements and stuff. Mm-hmm. I just really like that. And I think I was just talking, Jamie and I were talking way too long about Animal Crossing before we started this recording.
For like an hour.
It was stupid. My bad. But I was telling her that I can be very traditional with the like overall shape of things. I like there to be bright colors. I like there to be glitter. I like there to be, you know, kind of I like detailing that's modernized or loud. But when it comes to the silhouette of things, I often want them to be a little bit more traditional. And I think that's what does it for me, is that we'll have the silhouette of coats with tails and long gowns and corsets and these, you know, ridiculous hats and cloaks and all of this stuff. But we're gonna make them out of like space age fabrics and trim them with weird metals and add details to make it clear that this is for living on a different planet in a different place. And I just really like that. I think that's neat. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's the way this starts off is really weird because the doctor is separated from Amy and Rory.
Well, they're on their honeymoon.
They're like, but we didn't know that.
Not at first. We hear about a honeymoon suite and then Amy shows up and you're like, okay, get it.
Yeah. So it was like a weird thing because I'm expecting them to all be traveling together the way they were at the end of the last episode. And that's not how it's working. And I was just a little bit like taken aback at the fact that she and Rory are on their honeymoon, which is fine. But I kind of expected the doctor to be on the same ship with them still. And have, you know, he parks his TARDIS in the TARDIS parking lot and lets them go to their room and have some privacy. But then he stays around with them and they come and hang out with him when they feel like it and when they want to get a drink at the pool. And to find out that he basically, like, they hopped on the TARDIS and I guess he dropped them off somewhere that he thought they'd have a nice little honeymoon and then went away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very polite. I appreciate it. It's thoughtful. Good. Let them have their time. But also, I wasn't ready for them to not be together. So I got very taken aback when this starts off with Amy and Rory. We don't see the doctor, who I assumed in this opening was off somewhere else doing his doctor emergency handling of things. But then we see him roll into Scrooge's parlor, workplace, whatever, through the fireplace. And I was like, wait, what is he doing here? If the ship is, go help. What are you doing? So that was my being confused there. But yeah, so what it turns out is happening. I also love that Amy is wearing her policewoman's uniform. Mm-hmm. And when they say that she has been in the honeymoon suite, I was like, oh, all right. And then Rory shows up and he has his Centurion. Is that the?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense too. Okay. You have fun, kids.
Rory actually says, oh, we were just having
just a
fun.
bit of fun. Yeah, it's fine. I get it, buddy. You don't have to explain anything. But yeah, I thought that was a fun detail. And I also like that makes so much sense that like if you are doing these kinds of like weird missions and going on these trips where you're like meeting alien beings and wearing things that you wouldn't normally wear, then you might just kind of be like, hey, I couldn't say anything about it at the time, but you know, sure enough, it kind of did it for me. And I could see that being something that comes up. So I thought that was really funny. Also, Amy's hair looks amazing this episode. She's always gorgeous, but she's just so glossy this time around. I don't know what they did. So yeah, the
do you remember when she shaved her head?
Land.
When Karen Gillan shaved her head for Guardians?
Oh, because she had to for what's her face?
For Nebula. Yeah, she didn't reshave it when she played Nebula in the subsequent movies. They figured out how to keep her hair and use a wig cap, but she opted to shave her head to make it easier for the prosthetics they had to put on her.
Oh, that's nice.
And I remember the first time I saw a picture of her, and she I don't think she went bald, but when she showed a picture of herself, she had like a little buzz cut, and I was like, oh my god, but your hair, all that hair. Mm-hmm. But girl could pull it off. I told you
that I shaved my head once, right?
Completely?
It was about a half-inch long.
All of it?
It wasn't like a shave, but it was very short.
That's basically what she did.
Yeah, it was like, I went and got a haircut. It was during a phase of my life that I was just kind of like, I don't know what I want. I don't know if I like anything. Let me just do other stuff and see if any of it sticks. And I went and got kind of a drastic haircut, and it was bad. It was real bad. And I had spent so much money on it too. And then I went and I just like decided, you know what? I'm not even going to try and work with this. Fuck it. And I just went into the bathroom and cut it all off myself and had a friend come and like clean it up in the back. And the next time that I saw one of my dude friends, he asked me if I had been attacked by a lawnmower because he's very tactful. But yeah.
In high school, I shaved half of my head, like from the tops of my ears down, all the way around. And so I had hair on top, and then the bottom half was shaved.
I feel like that's way more annoying. Is that because then it's uneven for so long?
Oh, well, it ended up being uneven, and I had to cut my hair really short when it started growing out.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would think, yeah.
It was dumb. And every time, because you know how that it's become popular again for girls to like shave the like one side, like how Natalie Dormer had for a while. Scarlett Johansson did it too, and I love it. I love it. Jason hates it, and so I went back and forth with like, I really want to do it, and he'd be like, "It's your hair, whatever. I don't like it, but it's your hair." But every time I was like, "I'm gonna do it," I would remember what a pain in the ass it was to grow out.
Yeah.
And I don't look good with short hair. So I don't want to have to cut it really short again. So that's literally what's kept me from doing it. Because it did look really cool when I did it in high school, I thought.
Yeah, my friend Sydney, she shaved half of it, and I thought it looked awesome. And then when it began to grow out, she like began to part it on the other side in like an effort to make it look like it was as long. Which kind of worked, but she'd have to pin it in place. And then eventually I was like, wow, you really can't tell. And she was like, yeah, I'm wearing an extension on that side of my head. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I could see that just being such a pain. Growing out your hair, even when it's just like your bangs, is such a pain.
My hair luckily grows really fast. So like when I cut my own bangs in a fit of fury a few months ago, I was so sick of my hair. I just fucking cut them. It looked bad. They ended up being too short. And it was, of course, right before I went to Dragon Con and met David Tennant. My bangs were fucking stupid in the picture.
I'm sorry.
So every time I look at them, I'm like, God, my fucking bangs are so stupid. Literally 3 weeks later, they were the length I wanted them to be when I cut them.
I'm sorry.
Because my hair grows really fast. But, yeah. I've learned my lesson enough. Like, now my bangs are in a really weird place where they're a little too long. And you know what? They're just gonna have to be. I'll pull them back. until I can go and get my hair cut professionally. I'm not touching them with scissors again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, there's been a lot of people experimenting with their hair with the quarantine, and I've seen a lot of bangs.
Yeah. I dyed my hair because I went and got it dyed right before this all went down, like a month before this went down. Mm-hmm. And I dyed it. It's brown, and then it fades into blue, and it looked great. Mm-hmm. But the blue does not hold. And so this blue had faded to like pretty ugly greenish color.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to a hairdresser. I don't care what my governor says. I'm not doing it. So I just bought some over-the-counter dye. I ordered on Amazon, and I dyed it last week. Just did it all over. Mm-hmm. The blue held where she had lightened my hair to do blue, and it didn't in any of the brown. So it looks the way she made my hair.
Oh, that works out.
And I did this like cool teal color. It's a fucking mermaid hair. I'm so happy. And I didn't have to go to a hairdresser. So stay home, guys.
In summary, don't be a dickhead.
Don't be a dick. Dye your own hair. It'll be fine.
All right. So we've been talking and we just haven't even gotten
I keep doing
anywhere.
this. Sorry, guys.
It's been 19 minutes. It's been 19 minutes. Oh, Lord. So we get to see a version of a Dickensian market with a lot more neon. It's like a combo of a Dickens market and like what's that movie with the robots? You know,
that's
one.
You know that one,
Blade Runner.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Blade Runner in the way that the streets are very narrow and the buildings are super tall, so it's kind of got a claustrophobic thing going on.
Okay.
And everybody's got these goggles and weird sort of like raincoats, and there are some kids that are carrying like lanterns, but they're perfect spheres. And it's fun because there's some things that are really recognizable. Some people are buying Christmas trees and they're fucking pine trees. They're the thing that you expect. And then there's, you know, just stuff like weird sphere lights and a thunderstorm in the sky that's circling a building that's generating electricity right into the clouds. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, what the fuck is happening here? And I have to register. I didn't check the date when Independence Day came out, but I'll be damned if I didn't just keep thinking that this building was about to be blown up by an attacking, like, because it's just like the shape of the dome itself looks similar, and the light is blue, and it's got the same sort of like electric effect. Like all of it was just so similar that I kept being like, what are they doing?
Independence Day came out in like 1994 or something. So
did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's older than I thought. Okay. But yeah, so we get this like wonderful intro. Oh, and by the way, it's Dumbledore.
It is Dumbledore.
And we
Dumbledore
get this wonderful
Part 2.
intro. Dumbledore, if things went another way. We get an intro of like him talking about what Christmas is to people, and you know, all of us coming together to agree that we are like halfway through the darkness.
Yeah.
And then he like turns to his people and it's just like, lol, except for you though, because fuck all y'all. I don't like you. I don't care about you. I'm not doing Christmas, and I'm keeping your frozen relative. So tough. And honestly, I was so excited. I said in the other episode that had Dickens how much I love A Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. It's like just so, it's so good and it's so relevant. It's still so relevant, you guys. I implore y'all, I don't care how many adaptations you've seen, please read the damn thing. Because there are some turns of phrase that are just precious and aren't going to make it into any adaptation. And I just feel like that's part of why I've always say that my favorite version of it is the Michael C. Scott or George C. Scott version. I was going to say Michael C. Hall.
That would be weird.
Right. That would be, maybe make that work. But it's got it's of all of the adaptations, it's the closest in its language. The dialogue, like entire paragraphs are lifted directly out of the book. So that's part of why I love that one so much. But once I realized that we were really doing A Christmas Carol, because I thought it was called that, and then it would, wind up that's the name of it, but that's not what we're doing here. And it turns out that's definitely what we're doing here, and I just was very happy about it. And Michael Gambon?
Gambon.
Gambon? Okay.
Gamboni.
Is clearly having a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
He's having such a good time that there were a couple moments where I was like, I feel like you're winking a little bit. But that was really more when it was like the introduction of this character in the beginning, when he's really playing up what a fucking bastard this guy is. And then later when we get into emotional stuff, it did not feel that way. So it was fine.
They did not think they'd be able to get him. They wanted him for the role. They didn't think that he would agree to it. And he agreed right away.
Nice. I love when that happens. I love when that I was watching a special about like the making of Home Alone, and the director was talking about how they needed, a soundtrack, and he was just like, "Oh my god, what if we just if we just asked John Williams
about this?" Yeah,
and he's just like, "We just ask," and John Williams was like, "Yeah, I'll do it," and he's like, "Word, oh." Yeah. And I love it when people who have that kind of power don't choose to be like
assholes,
too exclusive with it. It's just it's a nice thing.
Well, and it's also a good lesson of like, you don't know what someone else is going to be willing to do unless you ask.
Mm-hmm. It's
so
true.
Shoot your shot. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, so I had this idea. I think it would be good for you to, or thought you would be interested. Whether you really believe that they, if you think they're above your stature or whatever, who cares? Ask, because you don't know.
Yeah, I was reading a Twitter feed today, and I recommend it. I wish that I could find it again. I don't remember who started it, but it was a stand-up comedian who was like, we have all heard the stories about how, like, every single person who works in comedy has a story about how Chevy Chase is one of the worst people in the world. Mm-hmm. And what about the opposite? Who are the people that everybody has a story about what a nice guy this person is?
Was it John Mulaney? Was that their answer?
Actually, there was not a single John Mulaney mention, now that you say that. It was a lot of Henry Winkler. I could not believe how often he cropped up. It was just like one person after another with very specific stories.
I've heard that he is like just a doll.
Mm-hmm.
Just so nice. Dick Van Dyke, too.
Oh, that makes sense.
My friend met him in a post office in Malibu, and he tap danced with her. In the post office. And she called me afterwards and was like, I just danced with Dick Van Dyke. And I was like, I hate you so much right now.
I'm not even like, a Dick Van Dyke stan. But that's just the kind of thing that like, I mean, you don't get over that, right?
No.
That is, it doesn't get better. And you're not beating that.
And
you can meet however many celebrities, but that's just...
That goes along with what we started saying. Is she basically was like, I'm just going to ask. He could say no, but I'm just going to ask. And so she asked him, and he said yes. And they did a little dance in the post office. And how perfect is that?
I love it, too, because I bet he gets a lot of, can I get a photo with you? Mm-hmm. Can I get your autograph? And I bet he doesn't get a lot of, will you do a tap dance with me? So I'm sure for him, he was like, oh, this is nice. This is new. Yeah. I don't dance that much anymore. Sure. Let's do that. I could definitely see that being like something that he would agree to do just because of the novelty after having dealt with fans for a long time who often want the same couple of things, you know?
Right.
That's adorable.
So, long story short, be brave, guys.
Yeah, be brave and, find out if somebody's cool and feel good about the fact that there are some really nice folks out there. The stories that people were sharing on this Twitter thread, it's really remarkable how good it makes you feel to read about somebody who is nice to people, even when they're not being nice to you in the moment. It's just a nice thing to read. And the thing with Henry Winkler that I would like to learn to do, everybody said that he acted like he was so excited to meet you. Like it was you specifically that he had been waiting to meet and was very glad to finally be getting to do it in this way that was so genuine. And they were like, of course he couldn't care. He doesn't know me. But he made me believe that he was just so excited about it. And that's what all of the comments were, that came up. Him just acting like, oh, it is so good to meet you. I am really excited to work with you today.
Aww.
You know? And it was just like the most adorable.
When I met Sean Astin outside of the Tonight Show. I actually saw him on the Tonight Show and then waited around afterwards to see if I could meet him because it had been a goal my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I met him and I talked about Goonies and how it had been my favorite movie since I was 8 years old. And it was just a quick little conversation with him. He told me I was an official Goonie. We parted ways. And like 8 months later or something, I was working for TV Guide and we were doing a feature about him in the magazine. So there was a photo shoot and I asked if I could go because I'm such a big fan. Mm-hmm. And they let me go and I went up to him and was like, hey, I met you a couple of months ago. And he's like, I did meet you. And you know what? After I talked to you, I got in the car and my dad called. And then he like tells me this whole story about, yeah, I met you outside of Jay Leno. And then my dad called. And then this happened. And I was like, what? Because he remembered me. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't think anything has ever made me feel more special because I spent my whole life loving Sean Astin.
Aww.
And for him to remember me, I'm nobody. And then he was like telling me family stories, introduced me to his brother, and then was like, I'm sure I'm going to see you again because you'll probably come to our family barbecues. And I was like, what? Okay. We're friends now?
Family barbecue?
Great. No, because I called his brother because we hung out the whole time Sean was doing his photo shoot. And we exchanged phone numbers, and I called him, and he never called me back.
What a dick. He ghosted you.
He did ghost me.
That's all right.
It took so much nerve it took me like 2 weeks to actually call because I was so nervous about it. But I did finally do it, and then I left a message, and he didn't call me back, and that's fine. Just meant that I wasn't going to get to be friends with Sean, and that was all I really wanted. So it wasn't really about Mackenzie.
Yeah, maybe he sensed that. Maybe he was just like, yeah, everybody fucking wants to be friends with my brother. And
it's possible.
I give my number out like an idiot, and I just need to stop answering the fucking phone.
His roommate at the time was Dom Monaghan from Lord of the Rings and Lost, which...
Oh my God.
I didn't let him know I knew that, but maybe the general vibe came through.
Like, how did you know that if he didn't know that he didn't tell you?
Because I read it about Dom. Because I was a big Lord of the Rings fan. So I knew everything.
Well, I hope that everybody is really pleased with our assessment of this episode so far. And I feel like we got done ourselves, really.
Let's just talk about Lord of the Rings.
Oh, God. I should do a Lord of the Rings episode. So, okay. He is literally holding family hostage as collateral for their debts because he's giving out loans. And
this was something his father started.
This isn't like that unlike what it's like. I mean, it's very literal, but I mean, you know what? I'm not going to get into it because I'll just get so mad, but it's not that far off. And that I find very upsetting.
I'm sure if banks thought they could do this, they would.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that there are definitely people that their debt is bad enough that they would be willing to do it. You know, people can be so worn down by poverty that making this kind of sacrifice, it sounds like insane, but I could see getting to a point where you're just like, yeah, fine, fuck it, freeze me, who cares, go ahead, you know. And it's not like you're being tortured, you're just frozen and you're just unconscious. It's whatever, it's not a big deal.
And what we learn about this girl in particular is that she pretty much volunteered to do it.
Yeah, and that's like our first clue that something is up with her, because we find out later that she's like ill and like had about a week to live, and so volunteered because she was just like, well, I'm going to be dead anyway, I may as well. Right. Which makes total sense.
It also doesn't seem like maybe she told her family.
Yeah, she kept it secret from them that she was in this state, which is sort of a weird thing that she's like, I'm fine with being frozen, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm dying. Like, doesn't it seem like the being frozen would probably be worse?
Maybe her family knew. We don't actually know
that
her family didn't know. Maybe her family knew, but he certainly didn't know. Or his father, whoever took this loan.
I really enjoy the explosion of fire from the fireplace as the doctor comes rolling through it. The fire has gone out when he does it, which I don't approve of. I feel like that's rude. It's Christmas. Let the fire go. But it's a Yule log. Come on. But speaking of Dick Van Dyke, he really has a chimney kind of aspect because he's all legs and arms. He's so gangly, you know? And I know that it probably wasn't him that did that like somersault. It was probably like a stuntman, but they cast that stuntman quite well. And when he stands up and he's got that like suit on and everything that's all soot covered, he really does. He's got a real Dick Van Dyke thing going on in that moment that I had never noticed before when he was clean. So, yeah, and I love that he says that he saw the chimney and it was Christmas and his whole brain just went, what the hell? That sounds like a thing that would happen. You know? Why not? Sure. So he is pretty much here to bully Scrooge into saving this ship.
Well, the fact that this guy knows that this ship is going to crash and could probably do something about the fog to help them along. And is like, nah. At that point, the doctor kind of has to bully him.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I'm not using the word bully in like what a dick. I'm saying like, that's what he's here to do though. Yeah. Right? That's like.
Well, I think he originally was there to ask because this is the person in control. And then quickly learns, oh, well, this guy's not going. He doesn't have any humanity left. Because when he asks about the girl that's frozen, Kazran, or Scrooge, says she's not important. And the doctor's like, really? Wow. Because I've never met anybody that's not important. How delightful.
One of my favorite moments is him going up to the thing in an attempt to fix it himself. And Scrooge being like, well, they're, what does he say? Isometric?
Isomorphic or something.
And the doctor's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You are so full of shit right now. I bet I can do this no problem. And then realizes that indeed he cannot do anything.
Isomorphic. I found it.
Isomorphic. Yeah, isometric, I think, is a type of like exercise. But yeah, I just really like that. I always enjoy a moment of the doctor not knowing what he's talking about, thinking that he really does, and then just being super, super wrong. So this dude, he could lift a finger and save thousands of lives. We wind up finding out it's like 4,000 people, something on board.
4,003.
And he just cannot be bothered. And it's, again, like, it feels like such a extreme, silly example when you're like, well, who wouldn't just do it because they can? Guys, so many people have the ability to help thousands of people at a time. There are a lot of folks out there with the kind of wealth that is life-changing, and it's a fraction of their overall wealth, and they could do everything for a handful of people, and they just don't. They just don't, because I guess it just never occurred to them.
No, it's that they literally do not care.
Do not care. And
I saw a tweet recently that was talking about how some kind of tax or something basically saying, well, it was that, it's just 0.3% of the or 3% of the population could potentially die from COVID-19. Well, how about we just have it be 3% of the billionaires? And that would only be this many people instead of this many people. Oh, you're not okay with that? Well, maybe you need to think of why you're not okay with that. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's a really small amount. And all of those people, those billionaires, could just take a small portion of their money and fund everything to fix everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. Right now.
Yep.
But they're not even offering.
And I can hear fucking people, well, it's not their responsibility. They get to choose what to do. That's not the point.
That's not the point.
The point is, when you are somebody like me and Jaime, we cannot fathom having the ability to help people that way and choosing not to do it.
That's why someone like Lady Gaga...
That lack of empathy is just, like, astounding.
Yeah. That's why Lady Gaga is so impressive. Because she looked at this situation and was like, you know what? All these people are suffering. I have money to help. Who else has money to help? And went and bullied CEOs into giving millions of dollars to make sure that different organizations were funded with the equipment that they needed, the money that they needed to get equipment that they need. All of these major corporations that weren't doing anything until she's like, and here's why you should. Mm-hmm. And I'll say if you say no.
Yeah, that's the main thing, is I will let everyone know that you declined to participate in this. Because that's some bad PR. Because we can just stand by and do nothing. And that's acceptable. Choosing to do nothing is fine. But if we actively say no, that's bad news. So, yeah, it's really... I just like the whole thing... Look, nobody knows better than me. Charles Dickens can be just a tiny bit heavy-handed. Mm-hmm. He can just go a little too far and be just like so incredibly... yeah. But the basics of this whole assessment of a personality are absolutely true to this day.
Yeah.
A person who says things like, well, that's the surplus population, and that phrase gets used a lot this episode. The idea of the world has too many people in it already, which, by the way, I used to think also that we were overpopulated, and as much as it was like painful and terrible and awful to go through, that there was a benefit to deaths because it was a strain on the planet. Mm-hmm. I have since come to realize and find out through research and education that's not true. We have the resources, but they are being hoarded.
Yep.
and used for profit. So this idea that there's a surplus population, that is not actually true. We are able to care for everybody. We choose not to do that because we have made it unprofitable. Mm-hmm. We have chosen capitalism.
Yeah.
We have chosen capitalism over human lives. And it's just that simple. So this surplus population thing, what you are saying is these people don't matter. The end. And that's exactly what he says. She doesn't matter because she does not to him. He's being 100% honest, at least. The doctor begins to see that this is a man that is a mess. This is not somebody that he's going to be able to reason with. He's not going to be able to use his usual methods of appealing to somebody's better nature. He is going to have to, at first he thinks, shame. That is quickly proven to also be that this man does not have any. Mm-hmm. So that's not going to work either. And then he decides that what he's going to do is time travel to make this guy a better person, because there is a little boy that he raises his hand to and then chooses not to hit. And the doctor sees that and feels like that is very significant, and notes that this man has a portrait of his father in the office, but every piece of furniture is facing away from it because he just doesn't want to. He can't he can't leave his father entirely. He can't just not have the portrait up, but he doesn't want to be looking at him. He doesn't want his eyes on him. And the doctor appears that we are seeing a projection of a memory. How does this work?
So he went back. Scrooge is sleeping. The doctor went back to when Scrooge was a kid and sees that he's recording himself because he's going to do this experiment. He has this idea that the fish like music, and when they hear music, they're calm and they come towards it. Mm-hmm. He wants to see fish. And so he's recording himself doing this experiment, about to do this experiment. And then his dad comes in and hits him. The doctor goes to that moment and pieces that stuff back together and then projects it onto the wall. So when current Scrooge wakes up, he's seeing his own video that he probably destroyed after his dad hit him.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's why, because he's like, how are you doing this? And it's because the doctor saved a destroyed recording.
Yeah.
Because I was just well, you recorded it. Why are you so surprised by this? But okay, I get that. So yeah, we get to see that his father was really harsh and abusive and just, the same kind of person as he grows up to be. Does not care about people, sees them as cattle. That is a word that he uses a couple of times. And the doctor, it looks makes a lot of progress with the little boy. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't go the way he expected. Because as it turns out, just because you are able to give somebody a better time, you can't shield them entirely from heartbreak. And how they choose to deal with that heartbreak is going to be everything.
Right.
So what he does is pretty much the little boy, they get involved in figuring out what's going on with these fish. That's the first thing. I don't care about this. I like the idea of fish in the air. I like the idea of there being a weird, other kind of ecosystem here. I like that. I don't care about figuring out what the deal is with the fish.
Well, I don't think that the show does completely either.
Yeah.
They just use it as a device to get them down to the cryo chamber by this shark being injured. They need something that can hold it in stasis. Mm-hmm. And little Scrooge is oh, well, I have something. And that's where they really, that's where the story is really happening, is because of this girl, Abigail.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about Abigail. I liked this episode, and I want you all to know that. But this is like the most literal case of fridging that we have seen since fridging was coined as a phrase. So Abigail is a nothing. She's a beautiful woman who can sing like an angel and has no personality of any kind. We don't know a thing about her. For some reason, she like falls in love with young Scrooge, despite the fact that it still seems to me that she's at least 15 years older than him once he's, quote, grown up, and it made me deeply uncomfortable.
It's the Star Wars, the Phantom Menace conundrum.
Oh, yeah. It took me a second to even like remember what you were talking about because I've tried to obliterate the memory of those movies from my brain.
I keep saying that that's what I've done. When people mention them, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. What is this? Phantom Menace? Because I don't like to acknowledge those movies, but it's hard to talk about pop culture in any way and not at some point when it's relevant bring up the fact that the first movie had young Anakin Skywalker as a 10-year-old boy and Natalie Portman as an 18-year-old girl.
I don't know what they were fucking thinking.
And we're like, oh, in the next movie, they're going to fuck. Like, what?
It's
why?
Just like, I just don't understand what they're thinking.
Why couldn't they have Anakin be 14? At least 14. Then it's not quite so creepy.
Done anything they wanted. With the story.
Could have done anything they wanted.
They just chose to do what they did.
Did not need to start it with Anakin as a 10-year-old. He literally could have been 18.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have been gross. But it was gross.
Yep. Yeah, so she's like, they have this thing with the shark that eats half of the sonic screwdriver. The shark winds up like chasing them into the cryogenic corridor, as I'll call it. And she calms it down by singing, what does she sing? Something about, what?
It's a Christmas song, is it not? It's not one I know.
It's in the bleak midwinter, which is one of my favorite Christmas songs ever. I got so excited. And her voice is unbelievable.
I have stuff to talk about with her later.
It's
with who she is.
Ridiculous. Like, In the Bleak Midwinter is such a difficult song because it's a lot of minor keys that go in weird directions, and it can be very high pitched in like sudden moments. And she just was like the perfect voice to pull this song off. And I was so glad that they let her like sing the entire verse. I was like, let me hear it, please. But then they don't have her sing that song at the end, and I really wanted that to be the song that she sang again when it's time.
No, that one at the end was actually written for the show.
I didn't love it. I wanted there to be a Christmas song.
Yeah, I see that.
It's a Christmas episode. This is the whole thing. Like, I just felt like it was a weird choice to not have it be another Christmas song. And there are so many Christmas songs that would be appropriate to a situation of like, coming to like be the savior of the people. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer, I would have thought. But they did this other song about how like when you're alone, all you hear is silence. That's fucking depressing as shit. And I was just like, why did you do this? But anyway, she, the little boy, Mini Scrooge, kind of like tricks the doctor into coming every single Christmas by telling this lady that he promised he would. Mm-hmm. And thus begins a montage of them spending every Christmas Eve together and her saying doctor every time the doors are opened until one day little boy has grown up and she says his name instead, and he is very startled. And I was also startled because he still looks way too young. He could have been older. You could have done this at any point. Why did he have to be like so much younger than her? Anyway, they get involved And there had been a previous thing about like the number on the door of her little cryo chamber. And we find out that that was like the number of days that she had left to live. And it's going down as they spend more time together. And she doesn't tell this kid until they have fallen for each other. And he grows very embittered once he finds out. And pretty much takes it out on the doctor. And tells him to stop coming because it's getting old. And like leaves her in the cryo chamber because he can't bear to like finally lose her. At least she's like still there, even if she's frozen.
Right. He knows that she's got one time left that she can come out. So he's trying to decide when that one day will be the day.
Mm-hmm. And it's just such a perfect representation of fridging because she gets zero say in any of this. There is not a... Like, you get the impression that she loves Christmas and she's happy that they're coming, but they don't ask her if this is okay. They're just like, oh, he promises he's coming every Christmas. Bye. And they close the door. Every time they wake her up after that, they're using up a full day of the like week that she's got left. And they don't know that, but they don't ask her anything. And then when it comes down to she has one day, her like love that she has fallen for and trusts just decides that he would rather her be stuck frozen until maybe he dies. And then she never ever gets her final day ever. And if she does, he'll be gone already, which is incredibly selfish. Mm-hmm. And it's just so much about him. And I get why. That's what this is like. That's what A Christmas Carol, it's about Scrooge. That's the way it goes. But having her be like the thing, I feel like does a little bit of a disservice to the original story where she like, he has a love that he lost, but that's not all it is. It's a whole life of different regrets. And I know they have to focus on something for this episode to work, but having her just be this like prop is difficult. You know?
If we go back to what we talked about last week with the way that Stephen Moffat writes women, I promise I won't harp on this every time, but this is another perfect example.
Yep.
There's something about her. What do these numbers mean? What is that 8 on this dial? Mm-hmm. Well, we're not going to find out till later, but in the meantime, there's this pretty girl with a question mark, and we're going to go have fun. And then she's going to be endangered or literally going to die for the sake of someone else's story.
And not for nothing, but there are a variety of stories like this with like people being frozen in time. And it's almost always the woman frozen because she can't be old. Well, she has to remain young and beautiful forever. And the guy gets to be old. And it's fine.
Honestly don't think that was why this woman was cast or how it was written or Stephen Moffat's intention per se. Because he's telling a Scrooge story and you need Scrooge to be old.
And I get that, but it is like that theme. I don't feel like it's an accident either. It may not be intentional, but her being a prop and also just being gorgeous and young throughout.
Sure.
Those go hand in hand. They have to a lot of the time.
Well, that's just Hollywood too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been done for so long that it's completely normalized that an older man in his 50s would be married to a person that's 30 and nobody blinks an eye on screen. But the other way around, it doesn't work.
Let's be real here too. By the time they like fall for each other, they've spent 7 Christmases together. That's all.
Right.
7 days. I don't get her falling for him. Him falling for her, that makes sense. He's young. He's known her, so she's familiar and comforting. She is associated with like the one day of the year that his father is like kind of out of the picture and he gets to go on adventures. Of course he would fall in love with her. Like,
and
sure. But her falling in love with him, like, come on.
In the in-between time, too, while she's frozen between Christmases, he can go down to that little chamber and stare at her if he wants.
Mm-hmm. Make up a whole narrative in his head about who she is.
Yeah.
Because, like, they go and visit her family. He doesn't even know she has a family. He doesn't know anything about her. And is just like, why is she standing outside this house? You fucking idiot. Why do you think she's standing outside this house? Shut up. But in any case, so that was the part of this episode that I felt was like the weakest. And I was a little bit disappointed after I got over my initial excitement that this was going to be a proper Christmas Carol story. I was a little disappointed that we were just going to focus on like a love story as the central, like, regret and formative moment for him. Because part of what I adore about the original is all of these little examples throughout his life of him slowly growing meaner and meaner. And it's done very well when you like take it as a whole, seeing the way that it's not just like, you know, I understand again for this episode why they have it be like, well, his father beats him and so he winds up growing like bitter and angry because of that and turns into his dad. But if like in the original, it's more than that. His father is very stern and very like abusive emotionally more than anything. But there's also an insecurity about him of like wanting to be successful because he's afraid of like the miserliness comes from a place of panic and fear a little bit of being afraid that you're not going to have enough and not going to be okay. And I just find that to be as interesting as the fact that, yes, he was in love with a girl and he winds up turning his back on her in the original because of who he is and how much his priorities have changed. But in this story, her dying or her death being imminent happens to him. It's much more circumstantial and less character driven. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was a little bit disappointed that we don't get to see a result, because what winds up happening is the doctor finds him in the present again and realizes that what he has done has not changed this guy's decision at all. In fact, now he's just mad at the doctor for putting him in the position to have experienced this heartbreak in the first place, which he does not consider to be better than the alternative. And I would have liked to see the doctor realizing that he can go back in time and show this kid all kinds of affection and new worlds. But who he is who he is. And spending one day a year with him for 7 years isn't going to change the entire course of his development into an adult. I was sort of hopeful that we would find out that there would be other factors at play that would make him kind of wind up still being this guy, and that the doctor would realize that it's more complicated than what he thought. But instead, it really does just boil down to this woman that I love is going to die. And when it comes down to something like that, I don't have a lot of sympathy, because how many people experience this and don't turn into utter bastards?
Right.
How many people lose loved ones? You are out here taking loved ones from other people because I guess you're just like, well, that's how it goes, so I guess I'll just enable it because life's not fair. And I find that to be a lot less satisfying, because it feels like we're just trying to point to one incident in his life that has made everything else about him come into being. And that's just not really how people work. but I don't know how effective it is to try and do an alternate, like more in-depth thing in an episode. So, you know,
it wouldn't have been possible in the runtime that they had to work with.
Yeah, probably not.
Because it's really not even entirely possible to take the book of A Christmas Carol, sorry.
Man.
Christmas Story is a whole different thing. It isn't possible to take everything that's in that book and put it in a movie or in a play. They do leave stuff out. You've talked about things that I wasn't really aware of. Because I've never read it.
You gotta read it, girl.
Well,
it's really short. That's the main thing. Like, it's not like you're sitting down to like it's a novella. It's very short.
Maybe I will and we can discuss it. We'll see. I've told you how I feel about the way Dickens writes.
Dickens is extra AF.
It's not easy for me to read because I hate it. But maybe I'll do it for a special occasion and we can discuss it.
That would be fun. I'd like to do that at Christmas time.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I'm trying to get across, and I hope it's working, that I liked this episode, but I was disappointed in the choices the writers decided to make in terms of like formative moments and what they chose to focus on. It just felt like this love interest thing was a crutch. She as a character was just a prop and had no personality, and I was not at all invested in the two of them in the way I feel like I should have been. And that being like what turns him into who he is didn't really ring true for me. Even though I do like the idea of trying to change somebody and not succeeding. I think that's a really cool idea of doing all this stuff thinking, oh, see, now it'll change everything. And it doesn't really. It's a similar thing to what they did with Van Gogh. You know. So it's just an idea that I thought started out really strong. It has a lot of potential. It just wasn't quite executed as well as I wanted it to be.
That's fair.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. So he winds up, like I said, finding out that she's going to die, keeping her locked in this thing. And then when it comes time again for the doctor to try and reason with him to help the ship, he does not want to listen. And the doctor pretty much is, like, hands the reins over to Amy at this point. So the doctor had been the ghost of Christmas past. And Amy is the ghost of Christmas present, as she puts it. And she is a hologram. And brings him in hologram form himself to the ship populated by all of the people that he is essentially dooming to death. Mm-hmm. And I love Rory, like, shoving her aside at one point because he mentions, like, what she's wearing. And Rory just being like, hey, keep your eyes to yourself, old man. That makes sense to me. So you're hoping that he's going to see all of these people and be like, oh, they're actual human beings and they're going to die. And now I kind of feel worse about it. But it doesn't really make much of an impression on him either. They keep trying to appeal to his humanity. And he has actively repressed that. That's the point. The cruelty is the point, as we have come to learn over the past few years. Mm-hmm. A lot of us think, don't you care about this side effect and how terrible it is? But we, like those of us with empathy, fail to understand. When people endorse this sort of thing, they know about the cruelty and it's not a side effect to them. That's what the part that they support. And I really enjoy Amy growing more and more frustrated with this guy and clearly having no ability to think the way that he thinks. She's trying her best to treat him like a human being because that's what most people are. And that's such a relatable moment to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of just being like, I am, all I know how to do in order to make this argument is to appeal to your empathy. And if you don't have that, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to say. Where do I proceed from here? I haven't got a playbook for this now. And then we have a pretty great moment of the doctor. He interrupts this little scene as he realizes that Amy's tactic is not working either. And he is brought to the cryo corridor. And the doctor tries to say, better a broken heart than none at all. And he says, you try it. And then wants to know why he's here. And the doctor says, I'm not finished with you yet. You need to see the future. And this I thought was great. Because, of course, the original story is he gets to see just what everyone thought of him and how much nobody gives a shit that he's dead. And not only that, are actively celebrating because many of them owed him money and he was ruining their lives. And his death has been a boon to them, which is, it's very effective. But I love the fact that we have just assumed that's what's going to happen here. And that isn't how it goes. He immediately cuts him off with, I'll die cold, alone, and afraid. Of course I will. We all do. What difference does showing me make? And he says, I'm letting these people die because I don't care. I genuinely don't. I'm not even getting anything out of it. I just couldn't give a shit. And then it turns out that when the doctor says, I'm showing you the future, he means your younger self is standing here and watching you say all this shit. Mm-hmm. And that is great. I have had to stop and ask myself a few times in my life what my younger self would think of where I am. And let me tell you, it's a sobering moment to think back to who you wanted to be and what you expected of yourself. And then look at who you've wound up being and what you've actually done. And that's not just like, I wanted to be a rock star and instead I am an accountant and how disappointing. I mean, you wanted to be the hero. You wanted to be the one that did the right thing. You wanted to be the one that made choices for the good of everyone, at the very least for the good of yourself, which we often don't do either. And honestly, I finally reached a point that I feel like if my younger self could see what I'm doing, my younger self would probably be like, that's rad. Nice. But it is a really good measure, I think, of how you're doing to think it through from your younger self's perspective and ask, what would I think of this? So when his younger self comes out and literally says dad because he assumes, and of course his father in those flashbacks is played by himself in a beard. Mm-hmm. So it's meant to be, But when he comes out and says that, it's a moment that shakes him to his core, and he doesn't even know how to respond because it's so upsetting that he has turned into the exact person that he feared so badly and hated so much. And I really thought that was a smart way of doing the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come,
Yeah.
I liked it. It's just, have you ever stopped and thought that to yourself, what your younger self would think?
I haven't. But I wasn't a very ambitious child, mm-hmm. or even an ambitious teenager. So I didn't put expectations on myself because I didn't know what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of, you know, what would my younger self think of me now was never really a thing I needed to do. I've had my share of being disappointed in my own choices. But I just live in the moment quite a bit and realize it like, wow, what the fuck? What was I thinking? Why did I do that?
I think the difference in framing it as your younger self versus just being disappointed in your own choices is that when you're a kid, you just have that perfect idealism still.
Yeah.
You still have this very black and white concept of right and wrong, of the, you know, what is the right thing to do and the right way to be. And, you know, as you get older, you recognize that life isn't that simple, and right and wrong are not necessarily that easy to define or detect in the moment. But you also, as an adult, rationalize away bad behavior a lot more. Mm-hmm. And try and pretend that, well, it's complicated, when really sometimes it's fucking not complicated, guys. Sometimes we just know and choose not to, and then try to pretend it's complicated. And I think that's the thing for me, even more than like, what's your career? Did you reach your ambitions?
Right.
Basic stuff. Would your younger self see the choice that you make and think that you were a person that they would want to be around? Would they trust you? You know, are you somebody that they could rely on and would come through for them? And
throughout my 20s, no.
Hopefully not. If you were that kind of person in your 20s, I'm sorry, because obviously you had to grow up too fast. Everybody's 20s should be a disaster. That's just how it's supposed to go. But once you reach Scrooge's age, you should have started to figure out a thing or two.
Yeah.
Our 20s. What a nightmare.
Oh,
it's so unfair that the you know, time of our lives where we are physically at our peaks, and by that I mean, because I know, you know, there's all kinds of argument about what that peak means, but our bodies continue growing until we're like 24, 25. And then around there is when it stops and things begin to degrade. And that's why people joke about how like the turning 30 starter pack is a bottle of ibuprofen. But I really like, it's really unfair that we're at our peak physically.
And mentally we're just fucking nuts.
Yeah, when we're just gonna, everything we touch is gonna be like, it's
disaster.
Not going well. It's not gonna go well. If you are 20-something right now and you're like, why is my life a mess? Because you're doing it right, okay? Just know that. You are on the right track if it feels like nothing is on the right track.
Yes. I look back at my 20s and I'm like, God, it was a fucking disaster.
Yep.
Like, I can't believe my parents didn't disown me. I don't know why my dad kept bailing me out of shit. He was constantly giving me money. What was wrong with me? I was so irresponsible. I thought I was being responsible. Who are going,
what about me? I'm 30-something and I still feel that way. And is that a good sign? I'm sorry, sweetie. Too. I'm sorry. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but
I mean,
if you're a millennial, which you would be if you're in your 30s, you're screwed. That's that.
I mean, I hope eventually for most people, things do level out and you can learn from your own mistakes. I definitely learned from mine. Mm-hmm. Not at the moment, but I grew up. It just took longer than I think I was told it would. Mm-hmm. But now I look back on who I was in my 20s and I'm like, God damn, I did not have anything together. Not one thing. Not a thing. I was having a ton of fun. I was an emotional mess every second of the day. And I made a lot of bad decisions. A lot. Usually involving boys.
Yeah.
And often involving jobs.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started on jobs.
I'm so embarrassed of who I was when I lived in LA because of my, how just unconcerned I was about my jobs.
But that's part of the being 20.
It is.
Is that you have your life ahead of you and that right now you can afford to kind of give the finger and it won't really catch up with you until, another couple of years.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
I have to remind myself when I'm dealing with a bunch of 20-somethings that I work with that work for me, when they are irresponsible about their job, when they don't care. And I have to remind myself, remember that journal you found and how you acted about your job at 25? Well, karma. Here you go. Mm-hmm. I'm paying for it now.
Same. Anyway, so I thought that was a nice twist to not have the inevitable, oh, you're dead and everyone's glad scene. Because what does he care? He's dead. It's over. It makes sense in the original that somebody would be horrified at the fact that the whole town is literally celebrating your death. But the way they've painted this guy is a little bit different in his actively hating humanity and feeling like embracing death and nihilism is just part of coping. So it wouldn't, I don't think that it really would have made sense for him to be like, I can't believe this is how everyone has felt about me. That they've been saying this, it's fine. But to have his younger self and to almost fall into hitting himself the way that his own father hit him is just a really smart touch. So he pretty much breaks at that point. But then it turns out that the controls, which he is the only one who can access them, do not recognize him anymore once he comes back. So the doctor has to figure out an alternate way of coping with everything, because what he had thought he could do, which is just be like, I'll make you a better person and then you can do the thing you weren't going to do. The controls are like, a good person? Who the fuck is this guy? I don't think so. And so then we have I'm going to sing into the screwdriver, which will resonate from the shark in the clouds bit, which is nothing. And it's fine. It doesn't have to be anything.
No.
Who cares at this point? I do like, though, that, the shark in the cloud, swallowed that half a screwdriver at this point, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. But sharks fucking live forever, man. So the idea that sharks still being around is totally believable. It probably would be. Sharks are old as hell until something happens to them. They can just they're like a perpetual motion machine.
Literally.
Yeah. And she sings and it calms the ship down and they're able to land and everything is okay. Amy and Rory, they have their little moment together. They're cute. I was really glad that there was no more doctor flirting this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, somebody shared, I don't know if you saw it in the Mighty Network, and let me go check on this again, but somebody shared a comment from an interview with Stephen Moffat where Abby Jane shared it. Somebody asked him if there's any dialogue, I guess, that he regrets or doesn't like from Doctor Who. And he says, dialogue I don't think was ever a problem, but how about a whole scene? I don't like Amy coming on to the doctor at the end of Flesh and Stone. I mean, the idea is good and sound. Young girl reaches out after hours of deranging terror. But I played it for coupling style sitcom laughs and it doesn't work. Brilliant episode up until that point. Love the doctor's coup de grace, the scene on the beach with River, even the moment when we cut to Amy's house feels grand and epic. And then I screw it up with sniggering sex comedy. Lindsay Alford, as she was then, called me out on it, and I disagreed and stuck to my guns. And I was wrong, damn it. So...
what's his excuse for trying to kiss the doctor at her wedding?
I think that he was still in that mindset. I think this is him, much more recently having had... This tweet is from April 28th of this year.
Oh, so it was... Okay. So it was when they were doing one of their live tweets.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Max Curtis shared this, and I don't know who that is, and I'm not going to look into it. Oh, somebody in the responses says, my favorite detail is left out of the screenshot. He made sure to hire the woman who called him out later on.
Interesting.
Because he realized he was wrong and she was right, and he needs somebody who's going to be willing to be like, dude, bad call. What are you doing? So hopefully, it's one thing to hire somebody. It's another thing to actually listen next time. Hopefully he starts doing that. But yeah, so I assume that he probably was just still in this headspace thinking, oh yeah, that was really funny. Let's do it again. And it's not until like a decade past that he's got the perspective to be like, ugh, bad call, me.
I told you that my impression of why he wrote it that way was because he thought it was cute. So I wasn't wrong.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, because I'm not a huge fan of him as a person, I am impressed that he is self-aware enough and has grown enough to not just dig his heels in and stand by what he wrote. It actually gives me a little bit of respect for him that because he has said a lot of things in the press where I'm like, fuck you. I hate you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even remember specific stuff, but I just remember having come across it multiple times and just been like, dude.
Well, he very infamously said that the doctor could never be a woman.
Oh, cool.
That it would never happen. It can never happen. The doctor is not a woman.
Which, what does that even mean?
Why? And everybody's response was, why the fuck not? The doctor is an alien who changes their whole body when they regenerate. Why can't the doctor be a woman? And he dug his heels in. Said, just, not when I'm running the show. And, fuck you. It's so gross. And so if he's learning, that's good. That's good, because he's a very good writer.
Has he come around on the doctor could be a woman thing at all?
I don't know. I have disliked him for so long that I stopped paying attention to anything. It's part of the reason that I have been very resistant to Sherlock. Also because I thought that it was boring. But I hear it's great, and I've been resistant because I can't stand Stephen Moffat. But I'm finding a new appreciation of him through rewatching these seasons, that his writing is strong. He does not write women well, but he writes everything else really well.
I think that the women characters in that show, it's like a real up and down. There are times where I'm like, oh, that was well done. And then all of a sudden, next episode, I'm like, what are you doing? So I won't say that he's so improved and it makes sense now, but it's I feel like there's a bit more exploration at least.
Well, and where that tweet that you just read is also post Sherlock. So he's obviously come even further. He's learning, and he's continuing to learn. I haven't watched his new show yet either. I don't know how he writes women on this Dracula show.
What's the Dracula show?
It's on Netflix.
Is it just called Dracula?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
It's 3 episodes. It's on Netflix. I resisted it. A friend of mine from work was like, oh my God, you should watch it. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And I'm like, it's Stephen Moffat. And he's like, I know how you feel about Stephen Moffat. I actually agree with you. It's really good. And I'm like, I don't know. And so I haven't given it a chance yet, because if Stephen Moffat's attached to it, I'm like, I don't think so. But I'm willing to grow and say, maybe it's time to give Sherlock a chance, especially because I have a very new appreciation for Andrew Scott, who plays Moriarty.
He's so good in that show.
Like
Jamie.
to see him because
he is so good in that show.
That's what I hear. He's pretty much the main reason. I'm just going to be honest. The main reason I'm even remotely interested in watching Sherlock is because of Andrew Scott. It's not because of Benedict Cumberbatch, who I also like a lot.
Somebody got me a Moriarty pop doll.
I know, and now I'm kind of jealous. And I haven't even watched the show. I just love Andrew Scott that much.
Yeah, you need to, like... it takes a little while for him to really come up in the plot.
Sure.
But bear with it. It'll all be worth it.
Can I skip that second... Can I skip that second episode?
Oh, yeah. Fucking skip that second episode, please.
Okay.
It's trash.
Because I'm also going to have to be convincing the boyfriend to watch with me. Not that there's much convincing involved. I think he's interested enough. His sister has been pushing for us to watch it, too. But I just feel like getting over the hump of that second episode is just going to be so rough because these episodes are 90 minutes.
I don't remember anything from the second episode being at all relevant later.
Okay.
So I think you'll be totally fine. And I might be wrong about that, but I don't think if I'm wrong, it's even going to matter. So
okay.
Take that for whatever.
I'll file that away. Yeah, we might start that soon then. When we're done watching Community again, maybe?
Teehee. Rewatching oldies. So I feel like we pretty much talked about everything. We have, like, you know, of course, Abigail agreeing to sacrifice herself because, of course.
Blah, blah. Yeah. I mean, I really like this episode because I also like The Christmas Carol as a tale. Mm-hmm. I think Michael Gambon is really great in this.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think the woman who plays Abigail is really great. I agree with everything you said, though. She is just a cipher. She's just might as well be a cardboard cutout. There's nothing there except for her singing and her beautiful face and hair.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
But despite that, I did find it a very effective episode. I don't know what it is about the fish. I really love the fish. And I remembered that more than anything else about this episode later. It was, oh, right, the flying sharks! In my head, there were more sharks. I forgot that it was really just one. And lots of little fish.
I really, I'm trying to remember what it is that, like, his machine even does.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's fine.
We really should come up with some kind of Doctor Who specific phrase for all of the, you know, there's timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, which they came up with, but, like, for the science. It doesn't matter. Most of the time, they just scienced it. I don't know. I don't care.
Magic.
So about this actress, her name is Catherine Jenkins. She is a Welsh mezzo-soprano. And she officially became the world's most successful classical singer. She was crowned the biggest selling classical artist of the century by Classic FM. She had 13 number one albums, smashing the record books.
Good God.
She was a school teacher, and at the age of 23 is when she burst onto the music scene in 2003. She sang at Westminster Cathedral for Pope John Paul II, and then everybody fucking lost their minds. She has sung for the Queen multiple times.
Wow.
I read a quote that she said she shattered a chandelier once singing.
Is that really a thing that can happen?
She said I don't buy it. She was a soloist, and I hit the high note, and there was this massive bang, and all the glass came down from the ceiling. I'd like that to be my party trick if I can perfect it.
I really want that to be true, but I can't buy it.
I've heard people shattering glass with their voices, and not just in Harry Potter. Like,
the fat lady just knocks the glass against the edge and goes, "Oh, just with my voice."
Because it's something that it vibrates the air at a frequency, and glass is just sand. It's just sand that's been heated up. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. It's just, particles. I've never seen it happen, but I have no reason to think that this woman is lying about it.
I would love to think that there was a dude who rigged it. And she really thinks genuinely that she did that shit. But there was a guy in the audience with a remote. And he was like, wait till she gets to the high note. It's going to be so good. She's going to think she did this thing. And I'm just going to... Hold on. Here it comes. Okay. Click.
You're so distrustful.
Yeah,
You're so skeptical. I don't know for sure, but I think they may have written this role with her in mind. Because Stephen Moffat had heard her sing. I did read that this was written when Stephen Moffat, Karen, and Matt went to California. It might have been for a Comic-Con. And they got stranded because that volcano erupted in Iceland. And planes couldn't fly.
God. I'm sorry, everybody. Owen just texted me, and it sounds like a fucking earthquake.
Because of all the ash in the air, like, planes were grounded for a bit. So they were stuck in LA. And he had writer's block and was having a hard time, like, knowing he had to write a Christmas special. And the, weather and whatever, it's, like, not the, prime conditions for writing about Christmas. Mm-hmm. Los Angeles in the summer. So he just played a bunch of Christmas music and, like, found an idea.
Nice. I mean, that'll work for me. Some Christmas music, maybe certain food, make a certain thing to eat.
Yeah.
And really turn the air conditioning up.
I think the reason that I got into Christmas music the way that I did, to the level that I did, was because of spending so many Christmases in LA. And in Arizona.
So you needed to, like, make it Christmassy against the weather. Because
for so many years of my life and all of my adult life, I was never in a place where it felt like Christmas at Christmas.
That's depressing. I'm sorry.
It is depressing, actually. Yeah. I always tried to make the best of it, but it was never the same. The other little bit of trivia I have is that there's a moment when the doctor and young Scrooge, open the door for her. They're wearing these long scarves. It is a little nod to the fourth Doctor who wore the long stripy scarf. And it's when her timer shows the number 4. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that's what I've got. We do have a review, though.
Ooh, okay, cool.
This is from that Podchaser site again. It's from somebody named Grebenra. Grebenra. Grebenra.
Okay.
5 stars. Yay, finally able to write this. iTunes wouldn't let me. These girls These girls are just great. The unspoiled Natasha's critical eye and Jamie's love for Doctor Who makes this a fun way to revisit the show. I, like Jamie, have always favored 10, but listening along have found a new appreciation for 11, and I'm starting to realize I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the whole show from start to finish with this newfound insight. Thanks, girls.
Yay.
Keep up the good work. I can hardly wait from week to week.
Aw.
Thank you
very much. I really want somebody to say that they suddenly realize that they need to have more appreciation for 9 because of his neck. Nobody else has had the same appreciation of 9's neck.
No,
and
that's
I feel
all
really
you, girl.
alone out here. And I need somebody to relate and know what I'm talking about. Man's got a neck on him, I'm just saying.
Who was it that called it a dick neck?
Oh, it was Brendan called what's his face on Game of Thrones? Gendry gets his pants pulled down.
God.
Do you like seeing his dick neck? Yeah,
Sorry.
but this is not a dick neck. It's his actual neck.
I think it's just you talking about that like makes me flash back to something with you and dick neck. Why is that those two things going together?
I like necks. I
too.
like chest hair also. And he's got a little bit of that going on that you can see every now and then, like, depending. Just a tad. So, it works for me. Just saying. I'm just saying Rose's mom has good taste. But thank you very much for the review. Very much appreciated.
Is that your
Oh my God.
text
Owen,
again?
can you fucking stop? And do you want to know what he's texting me about? Animal Crossing. It's taking over my life.
Why is he playing?
No, he found out that one of our friends that lives like 2 blocks from us is playing, and he's trying to be like, be her friend. And I'm like, you already know I'm not online with this game right now. But anyway, he's just like, there's an urgency to these texts that is unwarranted, is what I'm saying.
Look, Animal Crossing is very important to us right now. We're in quarantine. It came out at the perfect time.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because like I am into it, but I'm not in the situation so many people are. Like, I still have my regular job. So I want to spend all day playing it. And I cannot do that. And I keep thinking I can. I keep fooling myself into thinking that I'm in the situation everyone else is. And then having to be like, Tosh, girl, you got to go read. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't do this. This is not your life. Stop it.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'm just going to play it really short. And 2 hours later, I'm like, wait, what time is it?
Because there's lots of little things that you
Yeah.
can just... And that's the same thing with Merged Dragons. Those of you who play Merged Dragons know what I'm talking about. You're just like, oh, well, all I want is to just get one more of these trees. And you forget that there's like 16 chains that need to happen before you get that tree. And every time you merge things, you're like, oh, it must be the next one. And then before you know it, it's 3 a.m. and you still haven't gotten your tree. But now you have to finish because it's 3 a.m. and I have to make this worth it somehow. Oh, guys. This is where my obsessive compulsive streak rears its ugly head, and it's just no good for anybody. But anyway, next week I am going to... Well, actually, no, you know what? I'm going to say hi to new patrons now. Real quick. We've got Niku Vakili, Amy Sophia Mare, Aaron Siebel, Eric Cox, Jimmy Manning, Neil Hill, Jamie Griffin, Jim Meisel, Ace Lang, Miri, and Stuart Worthington. Welcome to all of you delightful people. Thank you all so much. Make sure to join the Mighty Network if you haven't already. And what else? I hope you enjoy listening to Twilight. Next week, we record the final episode of Breaking Dawn. I recorded the penultimate episode yesterday, and Miles has got... Like, he is just so baffled that nothing has happened yet, and we're almost done with the book. He's just like, how...
Welcome to
there's
Stephanie Meyer books.
Right? He's like, there's 3 chapters left, and we haven't done anything. What the fuck? So, that ought to be interesting. Also, somebody shared a link that allegedly on Monday, there's going to be an announcement that Stephanie Meyer is finally going to release Midnight Sun, which she had canceled writing.
What is that?
Because it leaked. Midnight Sun is Twilight written from Edward's perspective.
I thought that came out.
She started writing it, and then somebody leaked the PDF, and she stopped writing it. So there's a gender swapped one, which might be what you're thinking of, and that was released. Where it's not Bella and Edward, it's 2 totally different characters, but it's the guy who's the human and the girl who's the vampire.
No, I thought that the version of Twilight from Edward's perspective had come out. I thought that was like not as big a book as Twilight, that it was like maybe more of like a novella.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it had come out. Maybe it was because of PDF and that's what everybody was talking about. I have been very out of anything to do with Twilight for a very long time.
That's because Stephanie Meyer, once it leaked, she was kind of like, well, I'm not finishing it because fuck you guys, but I will take control of it and I will post the PDF on my own website so you guys can find it. So it was something that, like, I won't say it was officially distributed, but it's, on her site to find.
What's the point of putting the book out?
Because it was not far along by the time it was leaked. It wasn't like she finished it and somebody leaked the finished manuscript. She was like 4 chapters in and it got leaked.
Okay. My next question, why do we need this? Who the fuck cares?
I don't care about the gender swapped version. I don't care about the short second life of Bree Tanner at all. But Midnight Sun had some interesting shit in it.
Really?
It was way more interesting than Twilight was, yes. Edward gets up to some things that I don't think Bella will ever find out about. Unless, like, I mean, they have eternity together, so I guess eventually he will tell her. But
God.
I wouldn't be surprised if he never tells her.
If this book is successful, is Stephanie Meyer going to rewrite all the books from Edward's perspective? Because what I really need...
better.
What I really need is what's going through his head when he rips open her uterus with his teeth.
Spoilers, but yes. But yeah, guys, so somebody shared that link, and again, it's like a theory, and I don't know where they're getting this from, but it seems like more than one place has started to share this story, so there's a source somewhere that seems pretty sure, and Miles isn't totally against it. He's basically like, because it's an official Stephanie Meyer thing, and because you started it and actually were interested, I trust that if we decide to cover this, it'll be worth it. Whereas the other stuff, neither of us really cared.
What? So the gender swap thing, is that written by Stephanie Meyer?
Yes.
What
because
the
she got
fuck?
so irritated at so many people insinuating that, like, Twilight is misogynistic, that she was like, it could easily have been the other way and it would still be the same story. I'll prove it. And then she gender swapped it.
Did she prove it?
I don't know. I never read it, and I really don't think she did, probably.
I might have to look this up just to... I'll be the guinea pig. Because I think she's wrong.
I assume she's wrong, is pretty much where I'm at.
She doesn't want to believe that she has, like, has ingrained misogyny, but she does.
100%.
Her lifestyle and the religion she belongs to ensures that.
I mean, guys, if you want to hear more about this, you can listen to the Twilight episodes. It's appalling. Like, at first, Miles is like, man, this book, like, you know, it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad, and people give it a lot of shit and whatever. And then we start getting into the end of book 2, beginning of book 3, and he's like, fuck everybody and fuck Stephanie Meyer the most. And I was like, yeah, now you get it. But yeah, so we're finishing up Breaking Dawn. If Midnight Sun is released, I'm hoping eventually we can circle back and do that too, because
that would be really fun.
Of reasons. And if it doesn't get
the
released, we did the first movie, and we're doing the second one after we're done. But if it doesn't get released, then so be it. And we're still doing Mistborn after Twilight is wrapped, and Miles is really excited about that. So, also, Miles created a wrestler name for me on his wrestling podcast. And if you guys don't already listen to The Next Wrestling Fan, NXT Wrestling Fan, you should, because I don't watch wrestling, but it's still really fun to listen to. And if you become a $5 patron of their show, Miles will come up with your wrestling name. And if you pay a little extra, he'll give you a gimmick. And I got a gimmick, and it was really good. And if you want to know what it is, you have to go and listen to the episode titled, Well, I Didn't Vote For You. So, anyway, that's my plug for Next Wrestling Fan. Is there anything else you want to mention, ma'am, before we wrap?
My minor plug is that Chris and I have finished up covering the first season of The Punisher, finally. The second to last episode has been posted. The last episode has been recorded, and she just has to edit it, but work has taken over. The week that we did the second to last, she actually had some time. Mm-hmm. And so she got it, like, we recorded it, and like 2 days later, she had it done, which is unusual. So the last episode will be coming. We are not continuing on with season 2 because she watched it and said it was so bad that it's not worth covering. And she told me what she watched, and it sounds like it was written by all new writers until I looked it up and saw it was all the same writers, and I'm baffled. Because
this is what happens with fucking Netflix Marvel shows.
Often. I don't agree with how you feel about Daredevil, but often, yes, this is what happens with Netflix Marvel shows. I am not willing to watch it if I'm going to hate it. Mm-hmm. Especially if Krista also hates it. And I also feel it's very disrespectful to these amazing actors that they have on the show.
Yeah.
That what they've had these characters doing, which is so out of character for all of them, I can't do it. I won't do that to my lovely, lovely Ben Barnes. I can't hate him. I refuse. So, we're finishing up The Punisher. It'll be posted. I want to thank anybody who's been listening to it over the last 2 years that it's taking us to cover 13 episodes. We appreciate your patience, especially Jake Bobo, who is always the first person to be excited when we post one. So once we have time, we are definitely going to get back to the Vampire Diaries.
Nice. That'll be fun.
That's a really, really fun
that.
show. Yeah. You should catch up, and once we know, we're going to get going with it again, because it's a really fun show to talk about, and we have a lot of fun talking about it. There's not a whole lot of anger involved with the Vampire Diaries. So
I love that. I know exactly what you mean, though. There are shows like that for me also.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for listening. I apologize that it took us so long to actually talk about the episode, and that probably, if you added up the amount of time we spent not talking about it, it outweighs the time we did.
I don't think so. I think it's about even at this point.
But yeah, what are you gonna do? This is part of why you love us, right? So anyway, thank you again. Come to Facebook.com/UnspoiledPod, Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast, and become a patron at Patreon.com/Unspoiled to get access to the Twilight Show. $20 and up, you get Unsober twice a month, which is me and Rashawn talking about different subjects. The most recent one that we did was covering the last one was sleep. The most recent one was
Outer Space.
Outer Space, where we talked about poop on the moon for a while.
I completely forgot you guys were doing it. I was so bummed. I'll have to listen to it.
It's a really fun one. And if you're $10 and up, you get a monthly postcard. And sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're very puzzling if you don't listen to the show that it's based on. But every time it's signed by me. So, it's fun. So yeah, we love you guys. And we'll see you next week with the premiere of season 6, even though this was kind of the premiere, but not really.
On IMDb, it's considered the first episode, but it's listed as 6.0. So,
all right. So the premiere of season 6.
Yes.
And toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.